It's pretty amazing how an artist can be one conversation away from transforming their skills. I received this drawing for critique by Murphy, and I recorded a video, which I'm going to be sharing with you. And then they watched it and immediately made a new drawing. And the level of quality was just this massive, massive jump. So I'm hoping that this video will be just as valuable for you. Please enjoy. Hey Murphy, thank you for sending in your art for a critique. So I've got a drawing from you, and you can see I'm kind of zoomed in on something. I want to try to change the way that you think when you're approaching your art. Values and line quality is something that you want to improve in. Your drawings tend to look almost childish, especially when it comes to facial features like the eyes or the mouth. I guess I'm going to make some assumptions here, but the way that you're talking, the way that you're articulating your problems tells me that your mindset is a little bit different than what you really need to capture realism, to capture the impression of something turning, something looking three-dimensional, capturing the impression of depth, and it's not the objects, nor is it lines. So what I've zoomed in on here, if you haven't figured it out already, is one of the eyes of the reference image of your drawing. We were so zoomed in at this point that we cannot really tell what we're seeing. If we squint our eyes, we start to see an eye appear. When we really just look at what we're looking at, it's just a bunch of pixels. It's a bunch of dark shades and then bright shades that is creating the impression of an eye. But there's really nothing here that's very defined. I mean, the photograph itself has no understanding. It just, mirrored what it saw. It's not actually an eye. It's just a collection of a few ingredients. So if you think about, if I told you that there is a recipe to creating art, and if you just always had like the ingredients to create whatever you envision, everything that you see, look around you, everything that you see is just a collection of three things. They are the ingredients. They are present in every single thing that you look at. It is value, edge, and color. Everything that you look at has those three things. Everywhere we look, we see things in brightness and darkness. So everything has a certain amount of brightness or darkness. And then everything also has a color. In this case, we've eliminated color because we're just drawing. So what do you have other than just brightness and darkness? Well, we have edges. How soft or how sharp one value transitions into another. So we started with three ingredients. Now we only have two because we don't have color. That is the only things that are used to create the impression of something believable. This eye is simply a collection of value and edge. So we have this value in here, and then we have this value in here. And how does this value transition into this value? Well, through a gradient. It's pretty tight. The gradient happens pretty quickly, but it actually happens through a gradient. Now, we're so zoomed in that basically everything looks like a gradient, right? If we start to zoom out, it's going to look more and more believable. But it is again, the collection of value and edges that creates all of the impression for us. In here we go from this value over in this direction, and then it gets lighter and lighter and lighter as it travels. I want you to think in this way, that you're not drawing eyes, you're not drawing noses, you're not trying to delineate. You are just trying to capture the correct value and then capture the correct transition. If I can get you somehow to not think that you're drawing an eye, but that instead you are just drawing values and edges, that would be a big win. Same thing with this nose. It is just a collection of values and edges. This is a pretty abrupt transition. It's a pretty sharp edge, right? There's a little bit of a gradient there, but it's pretty sharp, pretty fast. And here it's a little bit softer. So it's through understanding these kind of ingredients. Trees, goats, every part of my face, they all have the values and edges. But that's all this really is. So ways to change your mindset would be, one, to try first eliminate lines. Lines don't exist. We only have edges. So in here, we have a bright value, and it, for the most part, is pretty much the same value until it stops. And then another value picks up. And what's in between them? The edge, however sharp or soft it is. This edge right here is a little bit sharper then say some of the edges over here, but it's an edge. There's no dark line like this one. There's no line that goes between it. And look at how this immediately flattens out the image when we put a line in there. Flattens it out. So when I come over here and you tell me that you're trying to do line quality, again, I'm a painter, paint realistically, so I'm a bit biased here. There's beautiful line art that exists, but if you're trying to create something realistically, you cannot rely on lines to do the job for you. So this background you might not think is important, but it is important. You might want to take this value and actually go all the way to the edge. You might find that your drawing is actually much stronger for it. Now I know I get to cheat a little bit using digital software to do this. I know that it's a lot more work to draw all of this, but the background plays a huge role. Look at how your face is actually really coming forward now. It looks so much more solid. You've done really nice work here. This is a really nice drawing. Look at how that head comes forward simply by correcting a value and an edge and removing a line. It's pretty powerful. How do we help our eyes see these different things? So like if I come into here now, so here you are trying to add detail, trying to add sharper edges, trying to define what you're seeing. I can tell that you're thinking about the objects, and what you really needed to do was think about the value and the edges without trying to capture the objects. If you just got the value and the edges correct, our brain would do the work of filling in the information, and then we would believe that it is an eye. But you were focusing on capturing the eyelid and all these little highlights and details to define all of these things. And I understand that, right? This image is out of focus, so you didn't make this easy on yourself. But I think you're trying a little too hard to define the objects, when in reality it's just a scribble. It's just an impression that is actually somehow holding this together. So if I can kind of point you in the direction of what does hold things together, this shade in here, that holds things together, but this could be even stronger. It's very subtle, and you got a really tough reference image here, by the way. So good on you for being ambitious, but I would recommend clearer images, like really soft lighting. So I would say that there's this, let me try to break this down more analytically for you. So I see this value that kind of does this. I see this shape in here. It's super subtle because we still have a darker value that comes down through here, but this is darker than this, and then this is darker than that. So we can compare value relationships, and I don't quite see that in your work. I would want to see this value higher up in here, and that starts to define a cheekbone a little bit more. Slightly brighter value in here. So I'm thinking in terms of these values, and I know that this is going to be a soft edge. A lot of this is going to be very soft, but you might see how I just defined the form a little bit more. Hopefully you can see the impression. So with the strength that was just created, a little bit more closer to our reference image. So I'd be looking for those values. Here I see a highlight in here, a highlight in here, but when I look over here, I actually see a darker value up there, and then the highlight is a little bit further away, and it kind of comes down into this space in here. It's kind of in here. You can't really see these things unless you're looking from a distance. Your highlights are in here. That's changing the likeness and the impression working in digital. So I can bring my highlight out to here, carry this down into here, and try to capture that overall shape. Not perfect, but just doing this kind of quick and dirty. Look at how the lips are really quite bright, but you darken the lips because you're thinking that lips should be darker, but they're actually not darker. The light is affecting their value. So again, I feel like I'm shooting in the dark here, trying to change the way that you see. That really takes time to change how you see things, but it makes a big difference. And so I'm seeing you doing a lot of shading, which is good. So I don't think you're far away from this, but we want to look for those shapes rather than trying to say, I'm trying to draw a nose, I'm trying to draw a nose. You're trying to just draw the values and the edges that you perceive. Now, that being said, there's a danger in becoming a copying machine when you do that, right? You look over here, you find a value, you bring it over there, you copy it, right? And so there are principles that you can use, lenses that you could have to improve to know what to look for. So easy to think about brightness and darkness, but not think about the separation between light and shadow. Now, I know you're thinking about the separation of light and shadow because of how you handled this, which is fantastic. The reference, unfortunately, doesn't give you that much information about the light and shadow. It's so soft, it's so subtle. There's so much light inside of his eyes. There's not much of a shadow in here. I don't even know if I'll call this a shadow. And so that is very difficult. I would recommend that you're picking reference images that are a little bit more manageable. If you're interested in portraits, awesome, but pick portraits that have clearer light and shadow separation. I was just showing somebody some of this. This is for painting. You can see the reference is in here. And this is an approach to painting that is relying entirely on starting with a separation between light and shadow. This was the beginning. I was having the artist think about, like, they're not even trying to improve their proportional drawing skill. They can do a transfer, essentially. They can paint the shadows right on top of the image, especially if they're a digital painter. But you can also do this traditionally, where if I was going to ask you to make a transfer, you might do something like this, where you say, oh, okay, here is the eyelid, and here's where the eye begins. Kind of thinking about where these objects begin and end, which is fine. You know, that's important to do to a degree. You would be finding the edge of the nostrils here. You might draw a line right there because that's where that meets. You might draw the outer edge of the lips if you're thinking about that separation between the objects. And you might have a really nice drawing. You might focus on getting the outline of the face and focus on the outer contour of the hair, right? But then when I take this away, you're left with a flat image because it's just the outline of the objects. But if you instead find the separation between the light and shadow, so I think this would be worth doing as an exercise. And I'm drawing the shapes of shadow. Where does the light begin? Where does the light end? A little triangle in there. There's a little space in here. It's a completely different way of thinking. This isn't the light, this isn't the light, so I'm not going to mess with that. But this down here, that's shadow again. Could be something like that. This edge is between light and shadow, so I can put that one in. Here's where the shadow begins again. Little dimple of light. Now you might think, how in the world is this going to result in a believable drawing? Drawing all the shapes of shadow in here. Don't even need to draw the nostril. Would love your honest thoughts. Like, if I can get you over the edge and like perceive light and shadow like this through this video, that would be so awesome for me to hear. Let's see, it looks like there's a little bit of light right in there. It can take some time to perceive this, so don't be hard on yourself. But I'm perceiving that the shadow basically stops around there. Try not to add any additional lines of the objects, just trying to find the separations between light and shadow, something kind of like that. I can do the outer edge of this because that is the end of the object, but it is shadow, so I'm putting in that shadow shape into there. Okay, so I can probably stop there. Still looks flat, right? Well, not for long. Gonna start to shade this in. So you could do this. Now you could shade, actually, yeah, you could shade this in super lightly. Now, if you draw those lines, those outer lines of the shadows, yes, you're not really gonna be able to get rid of them, right? But the impression should still be pretty powerful. So you can think of these as studies. How good are you at perceiving the separation between light and shadow? It's a good question to ask. It's a good question. It's a good thing to focus on and improve in. You can just gently shade over all these shadow shapes. Notice how I'm not trying to draw the jawline. The mouth tends to be pretty complex. And I'm not drawing in that nostril. Just leave it alone. We have a strong impression of a face. Now, if you can do this very gently, where maybe your contrast isn't so extreme as what I've created, like if it's really gentle, then you have the underpinnings of an incredibly strong drawing. And now imagine what you would do if you started to add your great ability to capture the objects. Hopefully that was eye-opening to you. There's so much more to discuss about how to handle your edges, but that's a clear separation of using value based on light and shadow to capture form. But this is not going to work if you're using reference images like the one that you've sent me, because it's just not clear enough what is light and what is shadow. So that is one of the limitations of this, but I would really recommend pushing in that direction. So you're doing a great job with your shading, with being particular, being meticulous, all the perseverance that comes with that. I think you're really determined, and you've got a great eye for a lot of this. You're seeing things for their value already. I know it's kind of pushing that idea hard on you, but I think you are. Like, you're capturing this form really nicely. So you're doing really well here, but hopefully that's a big mindset shift for you and will dramatically improve the strength and the structure of your work. Let's stay in touch. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. If this was helpful, if you're still lost, just be honest. Tell me. It's okay. Want to see if I can help you out. All right. Take care. Thank you for watching. Here are the two drawings side by side. Hopefully you got something great out of this. I'm an oil painter and I'm coaching other artists. If you would like a critique like this one, then you can check out the links in the description. All right. Have a beautiful day.